live our lives, but in a protest mode. We are living in a new society, in a new country. Please stick to the idea that we are all fighting for human rights, and that should be the priority.
Hi, Iryna. Good
Hello.
to see you again, and good to see that you seem to be doing well, which is not self-evident if you think about what's happening in Minsk these days. We will have a short talk today, revisiting some of the issues that we talked about in the first edition of this Debates Digital series early this summer. And I want to ask you, how is it in Minsk right now? Can you work there?
Yes, you can, but it's a very different setting now because we do live our lives, but in a protest mode all the time. There are things happening every day. The biggest events are still on Sundays, but every Sunday we have big march, big demonstration, which still draws a lot of people, dozens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. But in between those big demonstrations, there are lots of actions. Every night, almost in every district, in every yard, there is a concert, there is a meeting of neighbors discussing things, future or the past, rethinking ourselves as a nation, as a civil society, organizing different kind of events. There are lots of symbols of the protest all around the city, and now you walk the city and you read those signs and you feel that there is this community of people. And the same happens in other cities, not only in Minsk, and that's something very different from the previous attempts of changing the situation here. So it's kind of, we all live this several layers of life. For me, it's a bit different also because I'm in the media, which means that we are covering all of this that is happening while also living it. And that's both exciting and tiring, as you can guess.
When we talked early this summer, we did that based on an article you wrote for our series, where you kind of predicted what actually happened during and after the elections this year in September. And I was a bit skeptical back then. You described it as the COVID pandemic had created a new self-confidence in civil society, not only in Minsk, but in Belarus as a whole, and that the foundation for political change was fundamentally different now than it had been in the past. It turned out you were right.
I was hopeful and I was right in some sense. I don't think that anybody could expect what happened after August 9th. And this came as a surprise to the entire society, to the world, and people discovered a new Belarus, or they discovered the country as such, because we were not very much known abroad. And there is a great sense of pride of being Belarusian now, even though it's still a long way for us to the changes we are fighting for right now.
But is there a way back? I mean, it's a lot of speculation about what is going on in your country at the moment, also geopolitically. But looking at it from the outside, you get the feeling that this is kind of a point of no return. Something fundamentally has changed in Belarus.
That's absolutely true. I don't think there is a way back. We are living in a new society, in a new country, even though the regime is still old and still there. What we also understood in those couple of months is that it will be a marathon, that the government will not give up, Lukashenko will not give up. There are over 100 of political prisoners in the country. There are more than 14,000 people which were arrested and spent some time in prison or still serve their administrative arrests. The journalists are being arrested and put in prison. So the pushback is really, really strong. I think those of us who have been in the movement for decades, we knew that the resilience of the regime will be really tough. For many of the people who came out on the streets right after the elections, that was a surprise. They thought that if the majority wanted the guy out, then he will listen, that it will just need to press a little bit. And now the society understands that this is a long-term process. So geopolitical situation, of course, is very difficult as well, but there is a lot of hope here. And also what I find really exciting is that there is the in-depth understanding of how much we need to change in terms of how the country functions, of the responsibility that citizens must take in order to move things forward. There is also confidence in ourselves and in our ability to self-organize. There is confidence that there is a lot of knowledge and expertise inside of the country and outside of the country. Of course, many people were forced to leave. Some are leaving because they can't live here or don't feel safe here, don't see the future right now. But together, we are pushing things forward, and that gives me a lot of hope.
You talked about the big demonstrations on Sundays, and this is has been much talk about that also in Western European media. The marches on Mondays have not been as much in focus. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, this is a relatively new development. There were 2 Mondays already, 3 Mondays actually, when pensioners took the streets. And that just another sign that the protest and the need for the change goes across all segments of the society. When we were talking in May, we were talking mostly about youth. There were lots of questions also from the audience. Is it young people who will be leading the change? Yes, students are doing an amazing job. There are protests every day in almost every university, very peaceful. They're singing songs, they are sitting down in silence, they are making posters, they're appealing to their teachers, professors, and rectors. So that's something that probably was expected and is happening. What we did not expect is that this older generation, which always is thought or was seen as the supporter base of the regime, they say, no, well, we are sorry, we did not do it earlier, but we are now here on the streets to protect our children and grandchildren. We want the better future for them. We don't have much to lose. We are hugely disappointed. They see in the crackdown, they compare it to fascism, as it's really brutal and totally uncommon for our country. And that's amazing that every Monday there are more and more older people marching half of the city. I'm amazed with their energy and in how fit they are physically. They were actually confronting the police when the police was trying to arrest students who came out to meet with their grandparents on the streets. It's just really amazing. And the strength of people, the braveness of people, and the peacefulness, these are those things which are really, really, really great. But of course, the talk will not be full if we don't mention the role of women, who played really tremendous key role in the first days of the protests, when it seemed that the shock of the violence was so big that the protest could go down from that point. And then the women in white formed the first human chain. And then on Saturdays, women are still marching. Every Saturday, the marches first were really numerous, and then now the police started to being really brutal, and now the women are gathering in smaller groups with flowers, but walking all around the city. And again, you see them everywhere, and that continues as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the women in the movement, who has also been a member or is a member of the Coordination Council, but who is also no longer, when we speak now, in the country, is the Nobel Prize laureate Svetlana Alexievich. She had a talk at the end of the Gothenburg Book Fair a couple of weeks ago, where she said several interesting things. But one of the things that she talked about was the need to renegotiate and invent what this new Belarus will be. And she described the talks that are going on in on park benches or on the backyards of housing facilities. But she also said that it's now important to find new strategies and new way of going forward that is beyond the protest on the streets or on the squares. Can you see this development growing? What could those strategies be beyond the street and beyond the squares actually be?
Well, Coordination Council was partly about this idea of having topical working groups, which would be developing those strategies. And that's a very difficult task. But as I said, there are very well educated, experienced people from all different fields who are now engaged in those discussions and debates and developing those strategies. Well, we don't know yet if the result is out there. It's something that, of course, takes time, but work was done before the protest as well. And so I don't think that that this is something that we really start from scratch. It's basically bringing together the pieces of knowledge that we've got before, adding some new energy and new people to this, and then building this new country, reinventing it. But again, I think that we have very good chance to succeed. But of course, the transition period will be very difficult as everywhere else. So we have to be prepared that once this regime is down, then we will have our hands full to make sure that what we build will be really democratic, open society with free economy and with a good future.
When you talk about this being a marathon and not a sprint, what is your time frame? What do you think about them? Do you think about months? Do you think about years?
This is the question for million. And of course, I want to believe that this will be months in terms of change of the regime. But it will be years to build a new Belarus. So this is really something that we have to be prepared for. But of course, when there is an opening, when there are less obstacles, when the political prisoners and all prisoners who are in prison because of their views and not of some crimes that they committed, when they're out, when there is a new election, and then there will be this very, very long-term process of building the country anew.
We touched upon the geopolitical aspect of this, what is happening in Belarus at the moment. And I think it's important to stress that the situation in Belarus is very different from the one in Ukraine in 2014, for example, during the Euromaidan. And this is also something that we hear a lot from our colleagues inside Belarus, that it's not about a choice between Europe and Russia, but it's about an urge for democracy and self-empowerment and independence in one sense. Still, this geopolitical question makes it very difficult for outside observers like me, but also for example, European politicians, whether they are in the nation states or are sitting in Brussels, to know how can one assist, how can one help, how can one support what is happening in Belarus now without being accused of involving oneself in internal affairs. What is it that you expect us to do?
It's a hard question because I don't think there is really much that the outside world can do because of what you said, and also because we understand that it is our struggle, it is our country, and it's our responsibility to bring the change from inside. Understanding all the external factors and this very difficult situation and history and geopolitical location and all of that, and the player on the east. I think that what the people involved in the protest expect is that the democratic world stands by us in terms of reminding that we are talking about freedoms, human rights, and independence of the country, pushing as much as possible, using any kind of tools for that, to start the dialogue and to stop the violence from the government. Again, this is very limited. The possibilities are limited, but if we stand by those key things, then at least we will know here that we are not alone, and that there is support, and there is this principal support towards the human rights. And I can't help thinking about the cover of The Economist last issue, which is talking about the global crisis of human rights. And I think that all of us in Belarus and in other countries, like in Hong Kong and other countries fighting for human rights, should be viewed as such, and other issues should be put aside. That we are talking about basic freedoms and basic human rights. And then, of course, please don't forget about Belarus. The news are not as hot anymore. It's important for us to know that the world is still watching, that we matter, and that this talk is also a very important part of it. Well, we all should use only peaceful methods of protest and of the movement. And I believe we will need a lot of expertise and help, but also as partners. We want to be treated as an equal partner to anybody from the West coming to consult us or help us with the future development of the country. But for now, the main message from me would be, please stick to the idea that we are all fighting for human rights, and that should be the priority.
Thank you very much, Iryna. Those are encouraging words. Thank you for helping us understand what is happening in Minsk and Belarus a little bit better. And we wish you all the best for the coming months and years.